Okay. All right. I think we're recording. Do you see a red button? Yeah, I do.
I do.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Karen Hawley. I'm back with Women's Abundance, and I am so excited to introduce to you our guest today, Dr. Taylor Sittler. I don't know if you all know him or not, but he is what I call a physician entrepreneur. We are both enjoying nature today for our Zoom interview in the midst of COVID-19 because we both need to get outside.
Yep.
But beyond being a physician entrepreneur, he is a board certified pathologist. He's a huge advocate in the medical technology space. So Taylor loves applying machine learning and even, I don't know, just any sort of technology to solve large problems and kind of come up with new innovations. So, he went to University of Mass, right?
Yep. For med school.
And he was at MIT, UCSD, Howard Hughes. He's also aren't you a professor at UCSF?
Yeah, I'm an adjunct professor at UCSF.
Yeah. So Taylor, as I said many times, not only is he brilliant, he's not a stranger to excellence. So I'm super excited to have him here, and you will find out shortly why I have him on the Women's channel. First, I wanted to start by having Taylor share with us why he is so passionate about the pursuit of medical technology and innovations.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me, Karen, and thanks for the very flattering introduction. I appreciate it. So I think what got me into medical technology to begin with was really more of an accident. I had been kind of a programmer since I was a kid, and then in college I began being interested in medicine, and ended up doing some work at Dana-Farber, and then during med school had kind of various projects at MIT and then at the med school itself, and just really I think having a software background and getting into medicine. Since I started med school, I've always been trying to figure out how to combine the two. Back then, it was much more difficult than it is today. Medicine and technology were really very different. And some of my early projects were in things like electronic medical records, and I started a small company with a friend there that didn't go anywhere. And then in my residency at UCSF, I really started to get interested in outbreaks and epidemics, actually. And I was doing a lot of work in DNA sequencing with a guy named Charles Chu at UCSF. And we actually developed the first version of a test that can identify any pathogen from a human sample. That means a bacteria, a virus, anything that might be in the blood or in the lung tissue or and I think it's really been through this set of mentors and people that I've worked with that I've been able to kind of keep that interest going. And when I finished my I did work with Charles and then worked with a guy named Dave Patterson, who's a really fabulous computer scientist over at UC Berkeley, and that really kind of led fairly naturally into a startup after I finished my residency. So it's been I guess it's kind of a long and winding road at this point, but I really just enjoy figuring out how to combine those two things. And I think there's an ever increasing number of ways to do that.
It's really incredible, everything that you mentioned, and you're still in touch with both of those individuals, right, Charles? And I think you
yeah
recently,
yeah absolutely.
COVID-19, you're like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, Charles is really busy these days, so it's a little harder to get a hold of him. But yeah, no, it's I think we could talk for a long time about COVID-19. I think there's been a lot of work done here for a number of years, and it's really amazing to see everybody come together to try and deal with this outbreak. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that is a side of you that I'm sure a lot of our audience is going to want to learn more about later too. But the main reason, everyone, I have Taylor here and how I met him and was introduced to him, and mentioned this a little bit, but he's the CEO and co-founder of the Cusp. And for those of you who do not know what the Cusp is, I want to say it was one of the first teledocing agencies, probably the first in the Bay Area. I don't know if it's first nationwide, but I'm going to call it first. And what makes it first is that the Cusp focuses on perimenopause and menopause. So the staff that Taylor and his medical director, Tammy Newhouse, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have hired, they are looking at physical as well as mental. So they have OBGYNs that specialize in menopause. They have OBGYNs that specialize in cancer and surgically induced menopause. They have neuropsychologists, a woman by the woman who wrote the book The Female Brain, I think.
Yeah, Luann Brizendine.
One of the staff members. Then they also have, near and dear to my heart for the Bay Area, naturopath doctors and functional medicine doctors. So it's pretty incredible. And the reason why it's so incredible, just to remind people, like when I was starting the Women's Health Panel, I learned, surprisingly, that I just assumed as a woman, and now that I'm 50, I just assumed that OBGYNs knew everything. I was like, I'm going to my OB to talk everything woman. And that's just not the case. And so what I learned in my couple years of research is OBs don't get that training for perimenopause and menopause. They have to seek it out, and it's so it truly is a specialty. And so that's what makes the Cusp so unique. And on top of that, they're teledocking. So I kind of want to move the interview into the throes of women's health, which I'm passionate about. And I want you to share with us, like, why did you start the Cusp? Like, what motivated you to create the Cusp?
Yeah, I mean, I think it started with my last company, Color Genomics. We started with a breast and ovarian cancer risk, and I was really impressed with our early customers. These were women in their 30s to 50s, taking care of kids, taking care of parents, and eventually taking care of themselves. And they were great health advocates, and I think they really valued health in a way that a lot of people don't. And so when I went to start this company, I felt like that was the place I wanted to start with, that population, those women. And it didn't take long to find an area of medicine that was pretty left behind, I would say, where doctors don't do a good job taking care of these women. And my mom actually had a very difficult time going through menopause. She initially she had really bad vertigo, which is kind of a rare complication, but she, when this started happening and, she would get hot flashes, she actually couldn't get out of bed for days at a time. And she was really lucky to sort of stumble on an estrogen patch that she could take. And that really changed things for her, but she had to go through several doctors and she asked friends, and it felt like this was an issue that all women go through, and they get very poor advice from clinicians, and often they're not offered the basic solutions like hormones and other natural therapies that can help them get through that. And so I really felt I started digging into that, and that really became the focus of the company.
That's amazing. I mean, I am still so excited that women get to have access to this. So kind of continuing down that thought path, you thought of the Cusp well before COVID-19. I mean, well before teledocking was needed. So how do you think it's going so far? And how do you think teledocking is making a difference? I mean, now it feels like COVID-19, everyone needs teledocking, but like, what's been the journey with the teledocking piece of that?
Well, when we started thinking about how to help all these women who are trying to navigate menopause, the only way that we could do it at scale would be through telehealth. Not only would it enable us to use the small number of providers who actually understand menopause most efficiently, it also becomes more, it's a nicer experience, I think, both for the patient as well as for the provider. And so we really, we started digging into this last year, and we built the first version of this service, and we're really impressed at how well it worked, and how much trust we could establish, and how we could actually take care of most of the issues that women face going into this without an appointment. There are, of course, rare situations where a woman does have to go in and talk with a doctor or get a biopsy or things like that. But we found that 90 to 95% of the care associated with menopause could be done virtually. And so, we would do video visits. We added a chat functionality so that, it's a bi-directional communication, because there's a lot of learning that goes on, I think. And, women need to be able to ask questions as they come up. And so we wanted to be able to be there in that capacity for them, as well as to, schedule visits and do more in-depth things when it was necessary. I think that started as somewhat of a difficult proposition, because I think a year ago, many women were more skeptical of telehealth. I think actually right up until a month ago, a lot of people associated with telehealth with, physicians who maybe hadn't made it in other areas, or, they're sort of the call centers for medicine rather than, the best providers. And I think now that's completely flipped. So I think, things will change fairly quickly in terms of how people perceive telemedicine. I think, the other thing that has changed is the, in general, I think you're going to see people move more online. But, as we've learned over the past 6 months, it's not just taking what was a traditional doctor visit and putting it online. It's really changing the whole flow of how the patient interaction works when you have that that connection that can happen at any time. And so that's where I think we've really started to focus, and what we hope to really bring to that menopause experience, and helping women better navigate it throughout the whole journey.
Mhm. Yeah, I love, it's like you had a 6 months of trial before COVID-19 to really get everything in order, right? To be like, hey, we have a really good teledocking service. So, I teledocked with Mindy, one of your OBs, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was easy. I got in and out, didn't have to drive anywhere. Within 15 minutes, we talked about everything. She had, she took the notes, got the records updated. It, for me as a working woman that's busy, I am so excited to have a teledocking service, and the fact that you have some of the Bay Area's best doctors on your staff. I mean, like, kudos to you. Um, so,
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that it went well. The other thing, just to add to that a little bit, is we offer prescriptions, as well as we'll do laboratories, and we can just schedule them for you so you can go get them done whenever necessary. So we try to make the whole service as seamless as possible, because many of the women who have taken part in the Cusp are very busy, and need to just be able to make this a part of their life, right?
Mm-hmm. And I love the trusted fact. Like, I love that, Brad is from the UCSF Osher Center. Like, these are big institutions with good names. So kind of, it's interesting that you said in the beginning people thought of associated teledocking with maybe subpar medicine, and the Cusp is anything but that, right? And obviously, for the audience, I've tried to build the excellence piece of Taylor and the Cusp up, but I mean it from my heart. I mean, you really, it seems like, strive for very high standards in everything that you do. And so I'm excited to see the Cusp thrive. So kind of finishing up on this topic of women's health, and since you started with color genomics and the ovarian cancer, and now moved into the Cusp, and you love technology, what do you think, so twofold question, what do you think some of the biggest shortcomings in women's health? And I know you've touched on it a little bit, but is there anything else that you haven't talked about that's a shortcomings in women's health today? And then what do you see the future of healthcare in general moving towards, now that we've had COVID-19 and this teledocking kind of surge? Or it could be anything. Maybe it's not teledocking. Maybe it's a new app that, we take pictures with. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, totally. So I guess in terms of maybe we'll start with women's health and go into healthcare more generally. I think women's health has, sadly been left. There are many different areas within women's health that need work, and I think that's certainly partly due to kind of, previously it was a male-dominated medical profession, and as you see with many companies, you need to experience the problem before you're able to solve it. So I think that, and particularly the journey of life that is unique to women, right? So puberty and periods and, menses, things like PCOS, and some of the difficulties that can come in there. I mean, there's a good portion of the population that has these disease, these things called PCOS, which is really a catch-all for a number of different things. So I think for, and endometriosis, I think there's a whole range all the way through to where we've seen the most activity in the startup space is around fertility and fertility preservation, and those types of things. There's still more work there, all the way into, menopause, and then now beyond menopause, where I think what we're going to start to see is people focus more on longevity. And so I think, there's just a ton of opportunity to improve women's health across the board. And what's really exciting is I think venture capitalists are starting to see this, and there's starting to be a whole category around women's health and that journey from puberty all the way through menopause and beyond. So I think that will continue to accelerate, and we'll see both new services. I think the services are still new, like physician services. What's a little bit more mature are devices, new types of therapies, things like that. And so I think those will come first, and I think the services will follow. And then maybe moving on more broadly to healthcare, I think what we're going to see is when the system moves online, we're going to see things become more anticipatory. So rather than, I think people have criticized the healthcare system as being reactionary for a long time, waiting until you have severe symptoms, not treating the underlying issue, but, treating the symptoms and just having people come in further down the line. So I think what we're going to see with the sort of deluge of digital tools that are coming out is we're going to be able to identify disease earlier. And we're going to do things to proactively deal with disease earlier. And then layer on top of that things like genetics that can tell us where you have particular predispositions and where we need to personalize your care. We're going to see finally services that will say, hey, you have a higher risk of colon cancer. We're going to start doing colonoscopies earlier. Or, you know what, you have a higher risk of diabetes. Let's figure out that diet now while you are still, while things are still good, right? I think we're going to see a shift from developing new medications and new, unique drugs and chemical entities to using more lifestyle changes, digital health, early interventions. These interventions have traditionally not had a clear path to revenue. In healthcare, the real path to revenue has been long, and it's been through the pharmaceutical industry. But I think new paths are now opening up through a lot of the work that's been done over the past 5 years. And now with things moving more online through the physician, not having to go into the physician's office, I think it's going to open up a whole new realm of things where you can combine digital devices like the Apple Watch, and you've seen large tech companies now pledge to make changes in healthcare combined with physician services. That's going to be a big change in healthcare.
And it's needed, right? Like we need healthcare to get better, to serve our families and our friends. So
Absolutely.
So exciting that you're at the forefront of it all.
Well, yeah, there's so many great people here, and it's a really exciting place. I think it's a really exciting time to be involved in it. This outbreak is it's a real tragedy in a lot of ways, that we were not better prepared for it, and we were not better able to deal with it. I do hope that there will be some real great change that comes from it. Certainly in health and telehealth. And then also, I hope in terms of our ability to get ready for things like this, because it's something that we can address as a country and as a world.
Right. And it really is the world at this point, right? This is the first time we're all really getting together on an epic level for the pandemic. So I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, like going out into nature during COVID-19 workday.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And also for the listeners, I wanted to mention that Taylor and his team are offering a special discount for Women's Abundance and KH Essentials followers. So you get $51 off any of the Cusp services with a special code, which I'll put in the Instagram post with this video. But I hope you guys check it out, or you women check it out. It's an incredible service. It's local, and I'm excited for you. So thanks again. I hope you have a happy, safe, healthy week, and keep doing the great work.
You too. Thank you very much, Karen. Really appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, see you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.